This tutorial is going to look at typical exchange rate questions that come up in a foundation GCSE paper. Now, this is always going to be a calculator paper because often when you're using money, you don't work with just whole numbers. You've got pence and cent if you're working in dollars or whatever the other currency may be. Okay, so always a calculator paper, and it tends to come up as a part A and part B, basically the same thing, but go in different ways. So A may be going forward and then B will be working backwards. First thing I'd advise when looking at this, it always comes up in a context, is basically just to highlight what the key parts of the question are. So I don't need all the information that's there. I'm really only interested in numerical information. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight what's actually important to me in the question. Okay, so I've got what he paid in America, what the identical pair of sunglasses cost in the UK, and then the exchange rate. And then I've highlighted basically what they're asking for. So which one is cheaper, wants me to say, and then what is the difference between the two. Now, first things first, do not get confused and say that obviously they're cheaper in England because it's 26.99 and the other one's 35.50, because these are different currencies. Okay, so it's maybe not as straightforward as it first looks. What I have to do is I have to convert them to a common currency. So I either put my pounds into dollars or my dollars into pounds. Once I've got them in the same currency, then it should be easy for me to say which one the cheaper one is, and I can work out what the difference is. Now, the first thing I'm going to set it out like is using a similar method to what we do on ratio, okay? So pounds on one side, dollars on the other side, and then all you notice is underneath I've just written the exchange rate. Okay, so always start with this. Pounds on one side, dollars or whatever other currency they're looking at on the other side, and then copy the exchange rate. Right, now I have one more missing piece of information that I can fill in. It tells me in England the sunglasses cost £26.99. So underneath the pound side, because it's pounds we're talking about for that £26.99, I'm going to write £26.99. Okay, now this one what I'm doing is I'm converting pounds to dollars, and then I'm going to say. What you've got to look at now, I've got to find that missing space underneath the dollars. And to do that, because it's a ratio, I'm going to do the same to both. So I need to look at what has happened to that one to change into 26.99, okay? It's always going to be times by a scale factor. Now this one is easy because it's 1, but if you're in doubt of how to find it, okay, so it's always a time sign, you can always write that down. If you do the bigger number, the 26.99, divided by the smaller number, the 1 in this case, which is easy, on your calculator, the calculator will tell you what the scale factor is or what we're multiplying by, okay? So this one's easy because it's 1. But if you had another decimal number, bigger one divided by the smaller one will tell you what it's been times by, okay? So in this one, we've times it by 26.99. Because it's a ratio, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other because it's a balance. Every £1 is worth $1.42. Same to the other side. And then I type that into my calculator and I get 38.33. Now what this means, it's not the final answer, it means that £26.99 in England is equivalent to $38.33. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. So UK equivalent equals 38.33, and in the US then it costs 35.50, which is also told me, okay? So looking at this, well, which one's more expensive? The UK is more expensive, so I can conclude that the USA is the cheaper option. That's the first part, and by how much? Well, it's the difference between the two. So if I do the big one, take away the small one, I get $2.83, and then all I'm going to write underneath is just a little sentence, USA cheaper by $2.83, okay? So in summary, highlight the important parts, you don't need it all, set up this ratio structure that I've done in the orange with the initial exchange rate underneath, write down one missing piece of information you've got, look for the link, that's the hardest part, remember, big one divided by the small one will always tell you what it's been times by. Do the same to the other side, and once you get to that point, it should be okay, hopefully, to work through from there.